some people might not realize this thing's actually on the ballot.
Right, and it's towards the back of the ballot. I think it's if you flip it over on the second page or maybe at the bottom, but it's incredibly important. In fact, I cannot think, Rob, of another government agency at any level of government which impacts New Mexicans more on a daily basis than the Public Regulation Commission. And maybe I should say something about all the things that they regulate so that your viewers know. So they're in charge of all utility rate regulations. So that would be your electric bill, your landline telephone bill, your gas bill, water bills, all of insurance. So that would include home, auto, life, title, all of those good things. Motor transportation, if you get a cab ride, or unfortunately if you have to take an ambulance somewhere, tow truck, moving lines, they decide market entry as well as what rates all those motor transportation companies can charge within the state. They do corporate registration. They even regulate the fire marshal.
So how many amendments are there on the ballot?
So there's 3, and they are numbers 2, 3, and 4. And naturally, we hope your viewers will and readers will vote for all 3 of them.
Why is each one would go down each one individually?
Sure.
Why are you in such firm support of passing each one?
Okay, so the PRC is one of the most dysfunctional state agencies we have. And collectively, what these 3 amendments are trying to do is to professionalize the PRC and also to strip it back to its core mission, which should be utility rate regulation, which is still plenty powerful. So the first constitutional amendment, which is Constitutional Amendment 2, would increase the qualifications and require continuing education for PRC commissioners. And we feel that for a position that affects hundreds of thousands of New Mexicans and commissioners who make decisions that literally involve tens of millions of dollars on a daily basis should have some qualifications for those offices, because right now all you need to be is 18 years of age at least, lived in the state for at least 1 year, and not be a convicted felon. That's it. But as you know from going to those hearings, the decisions they make tend to be very technical in nature. They're taking very complicated fact patterns and applying it to very technical statutes. It's really what judges do, either at the Court of Appeals level or the Supreme Court level, and those people, you want them to be highly qualified to make those decisions. It's the same with the PRC. So that's the first one. The second one is Constitutional Amendment 3, which affects the corporate reporting function of the PRC. And right now, that's supposed to be a very ministerial function. LLCs come to the PRC and they have to file their paperwork, who their directors are, who their agent is for service of process, that sort of thing. And the way it's supposed to work is they hand in their paperwork, the PRC bureau that reviews this looks at it, makes sure they fill it out correctly, and collects a $30 fee, and you're done. In reality, it hasn't worked that way at all, and there are many cases of businesses waiting weeks, sometimes even months, checks getting lost. And what we would do with this amendment is consolidate that unit with the Secretary of State's office. So the PRC does LLCs, limited liability corporations. The Secretary of State's office does LLPs, limited liability partnerships. What we want to do is combine it into an efficient one-stop shop the way 41 other states do. And it's particularly, Rob, in this environment, we want to be where we can be business friendly, and this is a great opportunity to make it easier on businesses. So that's the next one. And
But before we go to the next one,
Sure.
Would that lessen the load for the PRC if that second amendment
Yes,
passed?
and that's another advantage of this, is it pairs the PRC back. It's just one more step to pairing them back to their core mission, which again should be utility rate regulation. They don't have any particular expertise in this. The Secretary of State's office, interestingly, does a lot of this stuff with international wills, UCC filings, and they're really set up, I think, better to do it. Then the final one has to do with the Department of Insurance, which we would take away from the PRC, and we believe that would be addition by subtraction, and I'll give you 2 examples of why that is. The first is that the Superintendent of Insurance now answers to 5 PRC commissioners with competing political agendas. So, for example, 2 years ago, we had a situation where we had literally 5 different superintendents of insurance in a 4-month period. And of course, that's not good for any organization. The other problem that they've run into there has been that the Department of Insurance has been put on probation by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners 3 times in the PRC's 16-year history. And what's happened in every instance is that they haven't hired enough competent, qualified actuaries, accountants, and so forth. They get put on probation. And what's happening is past commissioners, particularly, were trying to get their politically connected friends into those positions to the detriment of the department. So we think that the department will function better outside of the PRC as an independent state agency.
So collectively, if all these 3 amendments pass, how much better do you think the PRC will be able to work?
Well, I think it'll be dramatically better. I'm not going to say that it's going to work perfectly, but I think, and what's interesting on that point, Rob, is that, I'm an outsider and I think it would work better, but what's compelling to me is that 3 insiders, 3 current PRC commissioners, Chairman Pat Lyons, Commissioner Jason Marks, and Commissioner Doug Howe, all 3 of them support all 3 of these constitutional amendments for the reason that you just asked, because they believe that it will make the PRC work better for their constituents. And what's also remarkable, as you know from covering the legislature, I've been doing this for about 2 decades. I can't ever remember an instance where an elected official was saying, take power away from us. Usually they're coming to the legislature or asking for greater power. So it's almost testimony against interest. The other thing to know about these 3 commissioners is one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, one's an independent. And I think that just reflects that this is about common sense rather than politics.
What do you say to those people? There are a couple of commissioners who are saying, especially about making the PRC more professional, saying this is elitist.
I don't think there's anything elitist about it. In fact, I think 15 other states, in terms of qualifications, do require more, some professional and educational qualifications. We don't, you don't even need a high school degree right now. And it's really hard to read those technical documents without some educational training. And I don't think it's elitist. I think it's common sense. And one of the point on that, Rob, is, if we were, imagine for a moment that this wasn't a government agency and it was a private business, and you were hiring somebody to make highly technical decisions, again, affecting hundreds of thousands of people, tens of millions of dollars, you would expect at least to get some minimal professional qualifications and educational qualifications for those jobs. And in this case, this is a job that pays $90,000 a year.
Since the legislature passed the respective bills to get these on the ballot, and as I recall, it passed with pretty much overwhelming bipartisan support, do you think, therefore, that voters are going to go along with this too? Are you confident?
Yeah, I'm confident. I really trust the public to figure this out because there's been so much publicity about the dysfunction at the PRC. This may pass for the wrong reasons. I think it may pass simply because of the troubles that one commissioner, Jerome Block, who's now in prison, had. And we would be making these same recommendations, frankly, Rob, even if there had been no Jerome Block, Carol Sloan, who also went to prison, because the way the PRC is structured, it's almost designed to fail, in essence. And I think these amendments are a critical first step into turning around the operations of the PRC.
Fred Nathan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate the time.